everyone. We're back again with part 4 of our story.
So this one's going to be about how we managed to survive the distance whilst we were apart. Obviously, the last episode we did was about our first goodbye. And one of the things we mentioned at the end was how important it is to have like your next visit booked. So I would say one of the things that we did instantly was make sure that we had our next visit booked all the time. Like that's one of the ways that we cope with the distance is if you can as soon as possible, just know when you're going to go see each other next. Like that makes such a huge difference because you can start a countdown and you can get fun with it. Like we made physical calendars. Jen sent me a bunch that she made by herself and she got all crafty with it. And that was really fun because then she sent it to me and then I could like cross off the dates on a calendar. And it really like every morning you wake up and you cross a date off a calendar. Like that makes it exciting. You're visualizing we're going to be together in X amount of days. So that makes it feel a lot more real, and that gives yourself your mind a goal. And yeah, you can work towards that. So that's definitely one of the biggest things that helped us. Another thing that helped us was communication. Like we made sure that we spoke all the time, pretty much.
You guys have probably heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. Obviously, as far as communication goes with your partner, it's really going to be a different balance for every couple. For Joey and I, it just happened to be daily communication. That's what we both feel really comfortable with, and that's what we both really, really wanted. So, yeah, every person is going to have that communication goal that they want to reach with their partner, and that's just
Yeah.
something that you're going to have to decide as a couple.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of DMs from people who are like asking us, "What do I do?" Because my partner doesn't communicate as much as me, or vice versa, the other way around. So it's really up to you guys to find your balance and make sure you're both happy. Like if you're not happy with it, say it straight away because otherwise, further down the line of your relationship, it's just gonna
Cause
form
problems.
cracks.
Yeah.
So the first thing was making sure that you always had your next visit booked. That was our thing. And then the balance. So our balance was communicating all the time as often
As
as
often as we
possible.
could.
And we
Yeah.
did that through all forms of things like Facebook, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Instagram. We just used a bunch of things. We never really stuck to something. It was just always as and when we just used all the apps available. There's plenty of apps out there that let you communicate for free. Another thing that's really important is adaptation. So throughout your LDR, like it's things are never going to be the same and you're always going to have to be adapting for each other. So for example, with us, we had an 8-hour time difference, so we had to adapt to that. The moment that I landed back from that first visit, everything changed after that. Like we were speaking often before that, but after I landed, we were like speaking all the time. Obviously, I went back to England. I didn't have a job at the time, but I had to get a job to fund the actual cost of going to see Jen again. So that causes you to adapt. You need to adapt because I had to adapt to getting a new job. And then Jen got a job because Jen finished school on that same year. So she got a job, so you have all these barriers that like you have to just adapt to it and find your times to speak to each other and spend time together. Like as soon as I got a job, all these contract jobs that I did, we had to change from speaking all night to speaking when I got home from work, and then I would have to go to sleep because it's just not sustainable to constantly be speaking all night when you've got a job the next day. And the same happened with Jen when she got a job. Because of the time difference, it really didn't help us. So we actually spent the least amount of time together whilst we were both having jobs because it was just so hard to find time. But we made sure we always did find time.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I remember really well, actually, that there was a period where I personally felt like we were struggling a little bit with finding the right balance because we had already sort of gotten into a little routine. And then when I started working, it sort of threw it all off. And so we had to figure out something new. And it is really important to learn to be really flexible with it and to just sit down and figure it out. I specifically remember that Joey sat down on his computer, he opened up an Excel worksheet, and he said, okay, from this time to this time we can talk, and from this time to this time we can talk. And he literally planned it all out. Like, you guys don't have to be that concise and that detailed, but you do have to figure out something that's gonna work. because if you don't sit down and find something that's working for your current situation, one or both of you is going to feel really neglected. And in the long run, it's just not going to work out.
Yeah. One thing that I did is I set alarms on my phone to make sure that you didn't miss any of those minutes. So when Jen was working and she worked for Amazon, when she had a break, her break was 15 minutes and that's all she could take. Like it was
Hmm.
so strict. You had to take 15 minutes. And bear in mind, those 15 minutes include her walking to go get her phone or whatever. So in reality, you only had like 11 minutes and we were like, we got to make the most of that those 11 minutes. So, and there were times where obviously I missed her call like straight away. And I remember you weren't too happy about it. And it's natural for that to happen. Like, if you've only got 11 minutes to spend, like, you better make sure you're being on time because that shows that you're committed. So, it really is as simple as just setting an alarm 2, 3 minutes before and making sure you get ready. If you're out and busy doing something or out with your friends, just say, okay, look, I'm going to go outside and just speak to my girlfriend or whatever it is. And that's such a simple thing to do. It's really not that hard. So,
Yeah, there's this phrase that says basically that you don't have time, you make time for the things that
yeah,
matter to you. And I do believe that that is true. Like, it is very, very, very hard to believe that someone is too busy. Like, because you prioritize the things that you care about in life.
exactly.
That is just like, that's it. Point, period, blank. Like, there's nothing else. You prioritize what matters to you. If your significant other is on the top of your priority list, then you're gonna make time for them.
Uh-huh.
Even if it's just 15 minutes for a phone call. Hey babe, how you doing? Are you doing all right? How do you feel? How have you been? What's up? Like but you have to make that effort, especially in a long distance relationship, because communication is everything. Communication is the backbone of these relationships.
And that's how you stay connected to each other.
Yeah.
Like, if we went like a week or two without speaking, I couldn't imagine how that would have been for us. Like, we would have felt so disconnected.
Yeah, or we've gotten some couples tell us through the DMs, oh, like if I'm too busy to call, I'll always make sure that at the end of the day, at least I send them a quick voice memo saying, oh, my day was like this. How was yours? That's a great idea. Like, we understand that not everyone can be talking all the time. Like, some people can't afford that luxury, but
Mhm.
it's about the effort that you try to put into having that conversation, having that communication. Obviously, there are some circumstances that are going to change that, like i.e., like military couples. We know
Yeah,
that's really hard. Some of you go months without speaking, and that's because you can't.
yeah,
You literally
yeah.
cannot. But if you have that opportunity, you definitely need to try to do that.
Yeah, situations are different. So, the criteria isn't going to be the same for everybody. But what I would say just on this is if you as a person, you're in a long distance relationship and you ever feel your significant other is perhaps not like dedicating his time to make it work, like I would suggest making sure like you talk about that straight away with your significant other.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. Just remember, you guys, as well, like, you could be feeling some sort of way, and your significant other could literally not even know, because their balance is different than yours.
Mhm.
We cannot expect our significant other to be a mind reader. Like, you really just have to come out and say, look, I don't feel like we're spending enough time together, or I don't feel like you're hearing me.
Mhm.
Talk about it, and then hopefully you can reach a resolution, something that works for both of you.
Yeah.
Obviously, if your communication goals are really different, then you're going to have to reach some sort of compromise.
Compromise,
But
yeah.
at the end of the day, you need to try to find a balance that makes the both of you happy.
And just going off from that, arguments, okay, let's talk about arguments because arguments are going to happen in every relationship. Like, it's impossible for two humans to never, ever have a disagreement or to not feel a certain way because of something. Like, it's just natural. It's a natural part of being in a relationship is having arguments. But how you get over them is, for me, what makes you stand out from like couples who last longer? Are you the kind of person who gets upset and then you just don't message your significant other for days? Because let me tell you, that is a recipe for disaster in an LDR. If you're gonna get upset over something, have an argument, and then you don't message each other for like a week or more, that to me is crazy. Like, And what's funny is when I first was going out with Jen, one of the things I noticed about her was actually that she was somebody who she got madder for longer, if that makes sense, than I did. Like, I'm the kind of person who, if something happens and I get mad, or somebody else is mad at me, I want to move on as quick as possible. Like, that's just been me. But Jen was different. If she got mad at me, I remember at the start, she would go like a few hours not talking to me. But what I did was I communicated with her that, okay, I know that's how you handle it, but that's not the best approach. Like, we spoke a lot about it initially, and eventually, like really quickly, actually, I noticed that she was changing and she was getting so good at getting over it quicker. Now, I'm not saying you can't, like, you can't harbor that in you for a while or whatever. Like, everyone has their own ways of dealing with it. But in an LDR specifically, I just don't think it's a healthy thing to completely block off communication when you're mad at each other. Like,
Yeah. That's actually one of the things that I struggled with a lot, particularly in the beginning of our relationship. And I think you're gracious when you're saying that I learned really quick, because it actually took me quite a while.
I remember as well, like when we would have an argument and then Jen wouldn't speak to me for a few hours, I would be like, well, I would pick her up on it and be like, well, you spend less time mad at me this time. Like, I was like, that's good. Like, I can see you're getting better at it. Like, obviously, I don't do that just when you've made up. Do not do that. That's the worst time to do that. Do that like a week later when you're both fine. Then you can joke about it. Do not make a joke just after you've made up. Like, that will make them bad even more. Like, I'm pretty sure
Wow.
that happened.
Wow. Okay, so this is the episode where you air out my dirty
No,
laundry,
no.
basically. No, really though, it was an actual problem. Just because Joey and I handled being upset very, very, very differently, I'm the type of person where if somebody makes me upset, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just not going to talk to you.
You're just gonna go off.
I would just, okay, like,
Bye.
bye. Yeah,
Yeah.
literally, I
Literally,
would.
she would say bye on the message.
And I would just go mind my business until I cooled off, because I literally did not have the energy to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with it. I was just going to wait until I got over it. And then when I feel like making up, then we can make up.
Yeah.
And I thought in the back of my head that that was a mature way to deal with it. I was thinking somewhere along the lines of, well, at least we're not really
Fighting
fighting.
because you
We're
just
not
cut it off.
arguing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I would think about it in retrospect, I was like, well, yeah, I'm making him feel really bad. Like,
Yeah.
I'm probably torturing him right
Yeah.
now.
Like, I would call her like an hour later to be like, okay, let me just see if she's ready to make up. I would call her and she would decline. And I'd be like, oh no, it's not, too soon. Like, too soon.
It was really good for us to learn a better way to handle that situation, but for sure that did take a while.
Because you got to think long term. Like, when you're living together as we are now, you can't just have an argument and be like bye and just walk out. Like, that's not a reality. You need to be able to handle arguments maturely from both sides. I need to think how your handling of the situation is affecting the other person. Try to not think of it as from your perspective. Think about it from their perspective.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to making sure you can get over those little obstacles.
I feel like when you're angry though, you're not going to do it that way. Like, you're not going to think about the other person.
Give yourself some time, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you
Well,
need it.
cool down if you need to
Yeah.
cool down, obviously. But yeah, what you're saying is a really, really good point. If at all possible, definitely think about it from the other person's perspective. When I started to think about it like that, it definitely changed my whole perspective on it. Like, yeah, I probably have a right to be upset right now because what he said was upsetting to me, but at the same time, like, I'm causing him so much stress by ignoring and declining his calls and just
Yeah.
disappearing, going MIA for a while.
And the other thing to remember is, this is what I always said to Jen, is that I'm not your enemy. Like, I'm not trying to fight with you. Like, I love you. I don't want to fight you. Like, can we talk about this and then let's just move on?
See, though, I feel like that came later because I do remember that in the beginning, you were kind of a little bit more just like, okay, like, I'm sorry, like, let's fix this.
Yeah.
Let's, get over this. And you kind of just wanted not to make me angry. So you kind of just didn't want to explain anything. You were just like, let's fix this.
Uh huh.
But afterwards, you started like I remember you would send me these long messages,
Hmm.
kind of like explaining why what
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what caused that and stuff. And that actually had a
Helps.
much better effect than just being like, I'm sorry, let's
Just
fix this.
yeah. It's
Because understanding the problem,
yeah.
it
I see what
helps
you
the
mean.
solution so much faster.
So yeah, that's how we dealt with arguments in our LDR, and I think that's a huge topic that not a lot of people discuss, but it's a huge thing to know how to deal with arguments during a long distance relationship.
Yeah. And just try your best to squash that as soon as you
Yeah,
can.
as soon as you
It's
can.
definitely not something that you just want to let simmer and just kind of expect to go away on its own.
Yeah,
Definitely not.
yeah. And as I mentioned at the start, adaptation throughout your whole relationship is massively important. I was basically contracting, so I was finding jobs that were like 3 months long, specifically 3 months. I didn't want any longer because I didn't want to go too long without seeing Jen. So I did that for the first like year and a half, and I was working, earning, go see Jen. And then I would go see her for like a good 4 weeks because I didn't have a job to come back to. There was no ties. But we realized pretty quickly that actually this is not sustainable. Like, if we want to close a distance and that costs a lot, like, if we want a house together, if we want to pay for the visa, pay for the wedding, like, all these things slowly come into, your thoughts of your relationship. You need to start thinking your long term goals and how you can achieve them. So what I ended up doing was I ended up saying, okay, well, let me look for a permanent job. That changed everything because that meant that my holidays were going to have to change. No more was I able to see Jen for 4 or 5 weeks at a time. I had to only see her like maximum 12 days each time. Like, I had to ration my holiday because in England you only get 25 days off in the whole year. So I had to use that wisely to make sure that we were getting the most out of the whole year to see each other. So it's important to adapt to the situation and have that conversation of, where is this going? How are we going to close the distance? I guess that's something you have to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. Thinking about the future is really important. I would say for us, we did not do that in the beginning
No, we didn't. No.
at all. I
I think
feel
it took
like,
2 years for us to fully think about that.
yeah.
Like, it's almost like we were avoiding it.
Well, that's what I was going to say, that before you came, while you were here the first time, even after you left, we hadn't talked about that at all.
No,
I don't think that was on my mind, literally at all. And it wasn't because I
no.
wasn't serious about you. Like, we were really serious
Yeah,
about each other
yeah.
right from the beginning. We knew we wanted to be together, we knew we wanted to close the distance, but that specific, like, how are we going to do this?
We were
Like,
living more in that present
yeah,
moment than
exactly. We didn't have thoughts of the future. And
yeah,
I feel like that slows down the timeline
yeah.
a lot, because what you're doing is living for the next holiday, living for the next
Exactly.
trip,
Yeah.
living for the next visit. You're not living for, okay, when are we going to
When are
close
we gonna
this? When
close
are we
it?
going to actually
Yeah,
stay together, be together,
yeah,
close the gap? So it does
yeah.
slow it down a lot.
Uh-huh.
I would say that we started really thinking about it right before we got engaged.
Uh-huh. I think we had a serious talk. I remember you were crying, and because we were just talking about who's gonna close the distance, and it was such an emotional time. Like, we had
But we didn't even know how we were gonna do it.
yeah, we knew nothing about it.
Yeah,
We knew
that's
nothing
that's
about
the
it.
thing. It might be a little bit easier
In the same country,
if you
right?
live in the same country, yeah. But if you're an international couple like us, it's such a long
Journey, like, yeah,
process. It takes so long to get from step A to step B, and then there's like 50 other steps, and then you can finally be together.
yeah,
So you really do have to start planning that. Like, if you are serious about being together and closing the distance, that's something that you want to bring up as early as you both feel comfortable,
Yeah.
because it takes a long time. And as Joey said, if you only start thinking about that 4 or 5 years into your relationship, then it becomes almost like overwhelming.
Because
Like,
you're like, oh, wait, hold on. We got to go maybe another 2, 3 years
yeah,
of LDR when you thought
yeah.
you were going to close it. Like, you need to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, we got engaged at 3 years on our 3 year
3 year anniversary.
anniversary.
Yeah.
And that's when we started looking
Being
into
serious.
how
Yeah.
long it was actually going to take and this and that.
And I remember actually when we got engaged, we actually had in mind we'll be together next year.
Yeah.
We thought it would take a year, but actually it ended up taking over 2 years, over 2.5 years.
Yeah. It's a really long process.
Yeah.
If you talk about it early in your relationship and you form somewhat of a plan, or at least like goals or guidelines, it'll definitely make the process a lot easier, like expedite it a little bit, especially if you really really want to close the distance soon. Then that's something that you have to already have on your mind, because just even the process of getting all the paperwork, filling it
Mhm.
out, if you're going to get a lawyer to help you with your paperwork, then that's a whole other thing, finding a lawyer. And then, just sending it off and them actually revising your
Uh-huh.
paperwork and then approving
It's
it.
such a
And then
long process,
it's
isn't
an
it?
extremely long process.
It goes back to how we started this podcast actually by booking a flight early. If you can actually visualize how you're going to close the distance, it makes everything seem more real. Because a lot of people, I think, they end up breaking up because they can't see the
Yeah.
end. They
Yeah.
just can't see, like, what are we going to just be apart forever? Am I going to be 10 years down the line? Or are we just going to be in different countries? Like, how is this isn't sustainable. Like, somewhere along the line, you could easily lose that connection that you've had.
Yeah, we've gotten quite a few people tell us that same thing, that they're really sad because they don't see a finish line. It's really heartbreaking, but it definitely is something that can happen to couples. That's why if you speak about it, you make a plan together, that will help a lot. It helps your relationship feel more real. It helps there be, some end goal in sight, even if it's far.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, you guys as well, you have to be realistic with it. Don't
Yeah,
set yourself
100%.
goals that are unrealistic, because all it's going to do is hurt your feelings when it's like, oh, we should have been closing the distance right now.
But then don't be afraid to like change your goal. If you've set a goal and you're like 2 months or 3 months away and you know that's not realistic, just talk about it and be like, you know what, this isn't realistic. So let's just
Yeah.
change that. And
Yeah.
don't let that derail you. Obviously, it's natural to be upset, but don't let that be like, oh my god, this is the end of the world. Like,
Yeah. 100%.
again, it comes back to adaptation and just dealing with these issues. Like, it's the same thing we've talked about, I guess, through the whole show, the same sort of themes.
So, of course, you guys, we want to hear from you too. We want to know how you all handled being
Uh-huh.
apart. Go ahead and drop a comment below and let us know what your balance was, what your dynamic was, if you had to make any
Sacrifices,
adaptations,
yeah.
yeah, sacrifices. And also let us know what you use to message each other. That's
Yeah.
a really interesting one. All right, guys, bye.
See ya.
Make sure to check out our online shop for long distance relationship gifts and merch. Visit www.survivingthedistance.shop and check it out for yourselves. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified every time we upload new content.
Bye, guys.